Brian Powell of Odd Run Far here with co-host Dylan Bowman and Megan Kimmel before the 2017 North Face 50. How are you, Megan?
I'm doing good. You guys?
Excellent.
All right. Love a good rainy morning in the Bay Area.
Me too.
You have been here 6 times, if I'm remembering. Previously,
7, right?
This is your 7th time, yeah?
I don't count,
A lot.
but it's something like that. I would say 6 for sure.
Have you run any trail race more than this?
I don't think so, actually. Yeah, and it's not really my style to come back to do a race repeatedly, but yeah, I like to have no rhyme for my reason, so I have to have one, I guess.
Has it been 6 years in a row?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's been a year that I've taken off from it, and I want to say 2011 maybe would have been the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've always used this race, or especially back then, I really used this race to like dip my toes in the water of ultra distance. So I've always been using it as kind of like a trial.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, for like the first year, I knew for sure I wasn't really going to finish, but I came out anyways, and it was one of my best race experiences ever, even within all of the circumstances.
Was that the muddy year and your calves went real late?
Yeah. It was the double loop.
Yeah.
And but really, I come back here now past the experiential part of the ultras because I really honestly just love the experience of running out here, and the trails are so smooth. It's such a contrast from most of the races I do in the mountains that it's I love it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because it is kind of different from the sky racing type races that you've been so successful at. And this year you've done a couple longer races that have taken 7-8 hours in Europe. Have you found that? I mean, are you enjoying the longer distance racing, or do you find that, you know, the sky running distance is more your cup of tea? Or
I've always wanted to have kind of like the full gamut, and I've always thought about this time of my racing time to be the time that I go more into ultra. So I have to say it's been kind of like a long-term plan. And yeah, I certainly have always gravitated towards and really enjoyed the marathon, even like, you know, half marathon to marathon, sky distance, sky discipline with like the technical and the elevation and the mountains. But when it comes to ultras and longer distances, or maybe even regardless of the ultra distance, I like to have a lot of variation. And this course is actually very similar to a lot of the running I do for training, and the kind of style that I actually really like in contrast to mountain running, because it's fast, the trails are really smooth, you do have turnover, you can kind of turn the brain off a little bit more and get more into like the Zen state or whatnot, compared to, you know, really technical running in the mountains where
it's high stress.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Or high focus, at least.
High focus, yeah.
So you did build up over a series of years, and then you had a win here, a 2nd place here, and then you were 10th last year.
Yeah.
And you were up at the front, pushing harder for a while. What happened?
Well, this race is actually really tricky, I think, for me, because it's at sea level, and it's very runnable, and I really think that I do have that classic problem where my lungs can go, but like my muscles, they don't have the training for like the quicker turnover. So like last year I just felt good. I didn't feel like I was really like cranking it out or like trying very hard. And then all of a sudden my calves would not go further. But I also came last year with a very low base of training. Like for 3 months, which low for me anyways, I had 3 months of about 40 miles average per week, 45 maybe, like 170-mile week in there. And that just, I knew coming out here was not what I thought would get me to the finish line. So at the beginning of the race last year, I was surprised, but I was just going with it, and it just didn't last.
So what has the build-up been like this year, and as it compares to last year's less than ideal training?
I feel like pretty good with my base right now. I've had a couple months home. I've been more around 70 miles per week, and I've been getting in some pretty decent like longer runs, 4 or 5 hour runs. So I hope my training is good for this race. I'd be really excited to be within that 70-mile like average week and be able to crank out a 50-miler. So I think it's kind of night and day. I really was not prepared last year, and I came to do it anyways, and I feel pretty prepared this year, so I hope to have a better performance.
I remember talking to you about 2 years ago, or probably for a series of years, where every time at the end of the year we talk, and you'd be like, I really want to race less next year. I'm gonna race less next year. I swear. This has not been that year.
Wow, I made a big mistake this year, and I really did. I totally got carried away with what the Skyrunning Series had to offer, and I overbooked a lot of races, and I kind of exploded in the middle of the year. I had a lot of other stuff going on in life too, but more than anything, just I tried to do way too much. So I know, yeah.
So talk about that too, because you are maybe the most successful American who's raced in Europe over the last several years. I think that your performances are probably on par with or better than any other American who's been over to race in Europe consistently. How do you manage to make all those flights to Europe, and what's like your approach to traveling so much, and how have you been able to maintain consistency? Like, you say that you've blown up a couple of times, but you've pretty much been incredibly consistent over the last 5 or 6 years abroad.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like this was the one season I really just did not pull off what I wanted to pull off. And when it comes to traveling and racing, I think the most important thing has been to I kind of just go with the flow, and I think you really have to if you're traveling. You can't be too stuck on one kind of like a regime. You can't be too stuck on one kind of like training program, and you have to try to make the most of your time home and your time while traveling. And within that also, I guess the upside of traveling a lot for those races is that you are racing quite a bit, so you're getting some pretty high caliber workouts going on even when you're racing.
Kind of use that as training almost.
Yeah. So, but really, I don't know like how it's worked out.
So do you fly back and forth, like in between races? Wow.
Yeah, I mostly do. Like a lot of people, I mean, I guess a lot of people would think it's ideal to stay out there, and it probably is for a lot of people, but I do a lot better when I'm at home. Yep, I feel a lot more grounded. I know my trails. I can be around my family and friends, and that's like kind of what I just need more than being in Europe. And I think it's pretty expensive to be out in Europe. So the only way I've ever been able to really make it work is to be traveling to and from the United States. And sometimes I have really short trips, like 5-day trips. Yep. Wow. 7 days, yeah.
Well, you've made it work a couple times this year. You had a really, really good run at Mont Blanc Marathon. Beat Ida, I think, by about 9 or 10 minutes there, and another good at Glencoe Skyline.
Yeah.
Are those probably the two highlights so far in your season? Or?
Well, you did the longer distance sky racing races as well, and had success with those as well this year.
The Val d'Isère race was kind of middle of the season, and that's when I kind of came home, and there was just my season actually was pretty good. I just had this small little block where I'd been traveling too much. I came home and I wasn't home long enough, and all of a sudden I was like getting back on an airplane and I just was not psyched, you know. And I had 2 races
like
back to
back.
Yeah.
What was the other one?
The other one was Tromsø, which was a really cool traveling experience, not such a good race. And that was a really big turning point, actually, I think, in my that little section was a big turning point in 10 years of my racing, actually, where I came, as a little tangent, I came home and I was just like, what am I doing? Why am I running? Why am I racing? Like, what is this all about? And was kind of low for a little while, and then all of a sudden, like, I snapped out of it, and I kind of feel like in like the last 2 months I've enjoyed running more than I have in a really long time.
Did you almost have to hit that bottom for a little bit to
I think so.
Move on?
Yeah.
Nice. I think we've all been there.
Yeah, it's an important place to be, I think, because I think the potential is you can go a lot higher, but you have to hit that bottom part first.
Cool. One more thing I want to ask you about. The men's race now is, in order to win, you basically have to go as hard as you can from the start. What's the dynamic like in the women's race? Because I think the year that you won, you were kind of off the front the whole time. Is it similar? Like, do you have to approach this way, or approach it in the same way in order to win the race on the women's side? Do you have to kind of go all out from the beginning?
I think there's been years where women have, but I think it's different with women. I think that just women in general don't have that like go out hard kind of as intense as the men do. So I think it's a trickier race because the women tend to change a lot more over the course of the race. this year's going to be really interesting. I think the competition for the women is like, I think the most stout I've seen it, you know, and there's a number of really fast gals, and I think it is going to go out fast regardless. So
could have a bit of a pack.
Yeah,
going on.
It could be, I think, one of those years where we have like a pack more than many of the other ones, where it's been a couple gals kind of floating with each other throughout the race. So yeah, I'm not sure if we're gonna have to go hard or not. I'm hoping not to. But that's what I always say before it all goes off in the race. I think the race always does start fast. So I think the potential for the women is a lot higher than it's been. That it's ever been, and it'll be exciting once there's you know, a group of 4 or 5 gals really pushing each other all the way through the course.
Well, I know I'm excited to watch this weekend, and best of luck out there, Megan.
Thank you. Yep.
Good luck.
Thank you, Dylan. All right.